Let's talk about Murphy's Law, because if there's one thing we've learned is that if something can go wrong, it will. You probably know that these colors are not good for ammonia and nitrite levels. Today in Aquaponics, we're going to talk about some near misses that we've had recently, and we're also going to talk about our source water and what we've learned in the process. In a previous video, we talked about the water parameters that we actually want. We're raising tilapia, and so ultimately they're pretty resistant to changes in pH, but they want the water to be warm. We noticed that the filters of our reverse osmosis system were actually getting quite dirty and built up. It had been a while since we've actually cleaned them or changed them out, and we noticed that we were actually adding chlorine in our top-up water. Now, chlorine is kind of the whole reason that we got this reverse osmosis system in the first place, because we didn't want to be adding that to the fish tank because that is quite toxic to fish. We ordered some filters, and when they arrived, it was pretty easy to switch them out. Just take off the old ones, pop the new ones back on, screw the shroud back on, and then because they come treated with a preservative, we ran the first little batch of reverse osmosis water into a bucket so that it wasn't actually contaminating our system. Once we had that reverse osmosis water flowing again, we were able to compare it to our source water. And you'll notice that the hardness was basically gone from our top-up water, and also the chlorine as well. We talked about in a previous video, adding hardness to the system is not a bad thing. An aquaponics system needs that to give it a natural buffering ability. What we were most concerned about is our chlorine levels, and we could achieve this by maybe adding something like spring water, which has no chlorine, but it does have a relative hardness to it, and a pH that's a little bit higher than what our system operates at. Through this process, we had another near miss when the water stopped flowing over the weekend. We were topping it up with water off the shelf, and we were trying to wait until the filters actually arrived. In the meantime, the system ran a little bit low and the water sat in the beds. It didn't have enough to actually initiate the ebb and flow cycle of our grow beds. Now, this led to a problem. The water wasn't flowing out of the fish tank anymore, and so the ammonia and nitrite levels built up pretty high there. When we came in on Monday, the fish were pretty still. They weren't dead, but they were pretty lethargic, and the water was pretty cloudy. We didn't feed them for an entire day, and we made sure that we got the water up and running again. One of the other problems that we had is because the water had sat in the grow beds, it suffocated a lot of the bacteria as well. So we did add a little bit of night out in order to give it a little bit of a boost of bacteria that the system needed. Once the system sat for 24 hours, the ammonia and nitrite levels came down pretty quick. And then the next day, as we topped it up with our reverse osmosis water, we noticed that they came down quite a bit more and the fish started swimming around a lot more energetically, and then it was time to feed them. We watched the parameters pretty carefully before and after feeding, and we were comfortable that our system was operating again within the parameters that we were comfortable with. We were interested in the water parameters of our system, and we wanted to look a little bit more at why our water is so hard. In Alberta, we have a lot of limestone or calcium carbonate in our sediments. If we were to go somewhere out east like Ontario in the Canadian Shield, they don't have as much limestone. This is a pretty strong relationship between where you are in Canada and the hardness of your water. So our water is naturally hard because of all those limestone deposits that are present in Alberta. This actually naturally buffers our lakes. It protects our lakes from things like acid rain. Because of our previous video, we were able to hear about this 16-in-1 test kit from SJ Wave, so we thought we would check this out. We took a sample of our source water, our top-up water, as well as our system water so that we could compare the three. This test is neat in that it allows us to compare different parameters, and you'll notice the main differences are pH, carbonate levels, total alkalinity, and then general hardness. We can also measure lead, iron, and fluoride levels, although there doesn't seem to be much difference between our source water or our top-up water. So that's what we've learned over this past week. And I think it's actually pretty important for an aquaponics system to know what type of water you are getting, so you know what type of changes you might have to make in order to make that water more suitable for fish. Thanks for following along with us at Aquaponics. If you haven't already, make sure you hit subscribe down there at the bottom so you can follow along with all the other stuff that we have going on at our school. See ya!
Awkward.